Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Norel Doan, and I'm the Director of Marketing for Viking Pure Solutions. And today, Dan and I are joined by Katie Rhone from KARE, and we're going to talk about the future of employee experience in senior living with insights from Viking Pure and KARE. So welcome, and thank you for joining us. If you want to participate in the conversation, feel free to drop a question in the Q&A section, which is to your right, or drop a note in the chat, and we will get to your questions toward the end today. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Katie, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Norel and Dan. Appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. I've seen these webinars before with other folks that we know in the industry, so I'm glad that I get to be a part of it today. So yeah, a little bit about me. I am with KARE, and I'll talk a little bit about KARE for those that may not know what KARE is or what we do. But my background for the past 20 years, I've been in the human resources, talent, organizational development space. In a variety of different industries, although healthcare has always been woven really throughout my background. So I would say that before coming to KARE, while I dabbled a little bit in the post-acute space, I was at a previous organization that's focused on patient and resident experience. But really coming to KARE was my first kind of dive into senior living. And I tell people all the time that my role at KARE, I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. And that's in a good way, in the best way possible. So my title is, which won't make sense to a lot of people, but Senior Vice President of Hero and Employee Experience. So what in the heck does that mean? I can imagine trying to explain that to your mom. So to back up a little bit about KARE, so we're a digital labor marketplace that connects CNAs, CMAs, LPNs, and RNs to shifts at senior living communities across the country. So we've been around now for almost 5 years. We can operate in 38 states, although we're not necessarily active in all 38. And then those individuals on our platform are what we refer to as heroes. So we have approximately 60,000 heroes on our platform. So I am responsible for their experience with us, anywhere from recruiting those individuals to making sure that they have the best onboarding experience, to how do we make it a care and engaging and sticky platform for them where they're able to really meet their needs, which what we know is that most of the heroes on our platform, they're full-time employed in other senior living communities, and they're using us to pick up extra shifts and to make extra money on the side, right? When you think about whole gig-based economy out there, that's really where, at least from a lot of our caregivers' perspectives, most of them, 75% of them, are just using it to make extra money on the side. To be able to support, their needs or their flexible kind of scheduling options as well too. So again, being responsible for those individuals, and also I have the opportunity to do research as well on the 60,000 care force, be able to provide some industry insights, and then also we have a team of about 140 care employees as well too that I'm involved in, and making sure that they also have the best experience. So that's a little bit about me and how I'm here.
Awesome. We're glad to have you. Dan, how about yourself?
Yeah, Dan Lawson here, co-founder of Viking Pure. Super excited to be able to help with this platform today. It's such an honor to have Katie on. Huge fan personally of KARE. I followed you, for the last several years. Know Charles and have always admired your leadership in this space, your disrupting technology and really ability to just further through the leverage of technology serve our residents, their team members at the community level. Has just always been really impressive to me, and we care very much too. Not just about the residents, but about those that are serving them. And I just thought that this would just be a really good synergy to kind of bring us all together and present on this behalf. So thank you so much for being with us, and excited to engage in this conversation today.
Fantastic. So, Katie, you mentioned some of the research. Let's start the conversation today by level setting a little bit. Can you please tell us about the research that KARE conducts and how that data is used to provide insights to the industry?
Yeah, great question. And this is something that I think we have, KARE in particular, just because of the base that we have, we've got we're in a really unique position where we have the opportunity to access 60,000 individuals with, honestly, one text message. Like, I can send out a text through our technology to all of our heroes with different survey, different research that we want to do. And so this is something, I will say though, this is something that we've been doing since the very beginning. I mean, our mutual, friend, also, James Lee as well too. He was involved in a very first research study with Charles on the tale of two perspectives that was done with with TALA, the Texas
assisted living. You got
it. Association. Yeah, that's why they say TALA.
Yeah.
But that's where it really started, 5 years ago, and then we've done follow up on research on our benefits white paper as well too. So understanding what is it that the care force, and again, when I say care force, I'm referring, instead of workforce, this is our care force, right? The ones that are caring for our seniors. I just also want to clarify that. Care force with a C, not a K. What they need in regards to from a benefits perspective, and then we also just did a trauma and resilience study, which I will get into as well too. And then we have a care force report that's going to be coming out here any day, and that's kind of a general sentiment about where the care force is at really in 2025. And so this research, where we conduct this research to then be able to provide, whether we're speaking at different conferences, being able to talk with operators about, because everyone's facing the same thing, right? Like, how do we retain this workforce? How do we recruit? We know that we're going to continue to have this shortage, right, of individuals that as our population continues to age, and census is continuing to rise, but yet we don't have the workforce to support it. So how can we provide some industry insights and data to everyone to be able to even look at it from a workforce development standpoint? I'm involved in the state of Arizona, and they've taken some of our research, and they're really laying out their entire state's workforce development plan, based on for example, our trauma and resilience data as well. So there's a lot of different applications for it, but I think it's something where you can capture the opinions and thoughts of 3,000 individuals in quite some time. You've got a significant data set to be able to look at.
Yeah, that's quite a pool to pull from.
Mm-hmm.
And so important too, if you don't mind. Like, I just, I'm so impressed with like the commitment to research-based analytics and presenting, essentially on those things as they present real life, in real time feedback for these partners of yours to make the decisions that they need to staff their their communities, their organizations, et cetera. I align well with that, mostly because of the need to share real, just real information, so that people can make the most educated decisions as it pertains to what their respective needs are. And I think that parallels a lot with even though it's a different kind of industry and value proposition with the incorporation of the Viking Pure technology. And we'll talk about that in a little bit later, but I think one of the main common denominators that I think between our two organizations that bring this synergy. So I credit you for that, and I'm excited to hear some of this feedback that you have on the trauma talking points.
Well, sorry. I was just going to say too, to that point, this is all obviously like point in time research that we're doing, but I think what's also exciting is the direction of not only where like CARE's going, but thinking about from an AI, from a data analytics, right, workforce optimization standpoint. I think there's going to be some really exciting things that are going to be coming out over the next year. And I know that's something, yes, we will always stay true to like this core research that we're doing, but really being able to provide that, workforce And that data and that optimization through artificial intelligence is going to be some exciting stuff coming up.
Katie, you mentioned that you can like send a text message out to like 60,000 people, you know, at one time. Like what would you ask them? What are some of the things that you ask them?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I'll tell you, I've done this where what we'll do is we'll put together, typically, we put together our research survey and, we'll put it in like a link or whatnot. There are times where I've done like quick, like pulse surveys or questions. It would be anywhere from, if let's say like we're looking to maybe expand or go into a certain city and we want to know, okay, based on the CNAs, okay, let's take Philadelphia, for example. Okay, so the CNAs in Philadelphia, maybe we've got some new communities coming on in some different places. Like we want to know, okay, how far are they willing to travel? What are they looking for in regards to pay? Like what are their hours or whatnot? So I can target those individuals. Like I can send directly to very specific individuals. And again, our mechanism, because everything on KARE is based via an app, right? Mm-hmm. So I receive notifications via text message or a push notification, and then that's how we communicate, like with our cool heroes, and then that's how we can easily collect data or information that way too. So again, that's anywhere from if I'm just looking to get some like preference data or information, or if I'm doing a full blown trauma study, I'm looking for people to participate in it. I can do it that way too, but it's just the technology that's able to do it.
Nice. Let's talk about that trauma and resilience report a little bit. From what I understand, it highlights the significant mental health challenges faced by the care force, especially following the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the most significant factors contributing to burnout and turnover in senior living communities today? Because I know those are big ones. And how is KARE helping those communities address those challenges?
Yeah, so that's all great questions. So let me break it down a little bit. I will say that this study is one that is, when you look at a lot of our various kind of research and papers that we've done, and you look at what KARE does, you might be like, why in the world are they studying like trauma and resilience? Like that's sometimes is a question that I get. It's like, why'd y'all go down this path? And when we look at, sure, like I could ask people all day long, what's going to make you want to stay in a job? Why are you looking to leave? What would make you go to this community? Like from a recruitment and a retention standpoint, we can ask very surface level questions. And I'll tell you that the trauma and resilience study, it actually came about very organically. And just to give you a little bit of a backstory on it, again, in my role at KARE, I often see the best of the best. I hear about our rock stars. I hear about, great things that are happening within communities. And then I also hear about the worst of the worst. So about 2 summers ago, we had just this series of events that happened over the summertime where we had our customer support team called me up and said, Katie, we called a nurse. They were following up about a shift, and he told me he was planning to commit suicide today. Like, what do I do? And so we're developing, what is our protocol, right? We're developing this on the fly. Like, what do we do? I had another hero in New Jersey who was murdered in a domestic violence situation. There was a series of just these really, really traumatic things that had happened that, again, just from my lens, like made it to me, but this is happening all across the country. It just was like highlighted. And so for me, I was like, okay, what's going on right now? Like there's all these mental health things, these mental health issues that have been coming to us. And so I was at CNA Fest, which is put on by the National Association of Healthcare Assistants. This was 2 summers ago. And I met a woman, her name's Jean Hartnett. And Jean is CEO and founder of Radical Sabbatical. And she's actually from Omaha, down the road from where I'm from. And I said to Jean, I said, hey, what are you speaking on? And she said, well, I'm speaking to the CNAs about understanding their own trauma so that they can provide care for others. And I said, I'm coming to your session, Jean. And so I came to her session, and as I was sitting there, and she's talking about adverse childhood experiences and ACEs and trauma, and how you can't provide trauma-informed care to a resident if you don't understand your own trauma. And every single CNA's head in that room was shaking. They, nodding up and down, and like they all went up to Jean and were like, I had no idea. Like, that's why I was the way I was. Like, I had no clue. And it was such a powerful moment. And now Charles Turner, our CEO, was there as well too. And so that's when we started talking to Jean, and this was like, okay, when I think about our research, like this is one of our most important, I think, studies that we've done to date. And so we went through the whole, like, again, because of the sensitivity of it, we went through like an internal review board process, and we were just overwhelmed by the amount of data that we received, that it's now a 3-part report that, we launched the study. It was in January of what year? Okay, we're in 2025. Okay, 2024. We launched the study in 2024, and then we've released these 3 reports, but it's broken down into understanding adverse childhood experiences, so early childhood trauma, and how that shows up. Not only, one, we understood the prevalence of it, which I'll talk about. And then the second report really focuses on what's been the impact of that trauma on our caregivers' physical and mental health. Then you layer the trauma from COVID. What's that impact been on your physical and mental health? And then the third report is really focused on, the current realities on like social determinants of health. Like, do I have enough money to pay my bills? Do I have transportation? Am I safe at home? It's one of these things where I think, as I talk to leaders within organizations, everyone knows that there are things that people are going through outside of our buildings, right, that they come into work with. And it was, most of them didn't really know, like, I know something's going on, or I know something has been, someone's been through this. But now we have the data to really understand like where the care force is at, and particularly from the toxic stress. I'm going to use this term called toxic stress that shows up. So if you know a little bit about, are either Norel or Dan, do you guys know about adverse childhood experiences or the original study that was done?
Not enough to speak to it. I've heard of it, but no, I'm all ears.
Yeah. So this is actually research that was done in the mid 90s by Kaiser Permanente. And what it found was that there are 10 basically categories of adverse childhood experiences, or what we call ACEs, that someone could go through. Now you can look up, if people are on the call right now, you can Google, ACEs questions, right? And there are 10 questions, and they cover domains such as abuse, neglect, and like household challenges. So anywhere from, did someone experience physical abuse or emotional neglect, or was the parent incarcerated? Did the parent struggle with mental health or substance abuse issues? And so as an individual takes this ACEs assessment, that you could have a score from 0 to 10. Okay, so all of us, we all have an ACEs score. But then what the research from the original study found was that individuals that have had 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, the impact on chronic health conditions, the impact on mental health, depression, anxiety, suicide, risky behaviors, smoking, tobacco use, and also just being able to be able to hold steady employment and whatnot. So when you get to 4 or more ACEs, that's where like those things, I mean, those stats just shoot up through the roof. And that's also when you hit 4 or more ACEs as well. So what the research has shown is that when you're in early childhood development, I'm not going to get to like science or, you know, brain development, but when you get early in your childhood development, if you have these repeated adversities over time, it does affect how you can process things cognitively. It will actually like biologically embed into your immune system. Like there's just so many health risks that put your body into a high risk of toxic stress. So if your body is always in this high risk of toxic stress, and your body is always, you know, you can't necessarily differentiate on like what is fight or flight. Like if I have a situation that comes up, like I don't know what fight or flight is. Like I'll tell you that we'll have situations with, you know, with individuals where it's like normally, hey, like this should be a very normal conflict situation that you could resolve. And if someone flies off the handle, right, like typically they're going into this fight response that their body can't necessarily regulate. So one of the things that we were able to find is that the US population in general, 17% have 4 or more ACEs, but amongst our care force, it's double. It's 34%. What? Yeah. So
why? Why do you think that is? That's amazing.
You know, it is. There's all sorts of different theories out there in regards to like, you know, why that may be the case. You want to think about too is that the individuals who have it, who are our caregivers, who are our care force, they're caring for others. So they've experienced a high degree of adversity early on. And where do they feel potentially fulfilled, right? In regards to where then they can go and they can care for seniors, like, and they can, you know, that's what they know, right? Oftentimes what we also know about ACEs is ACEs can be passed down generationally as well too. And we say like ACEs is not a destiny, but if I learn this and then
it's like a proclivity almost.
Yeah. And then if I pass this on, right, like it can just be this continued, it can be a continued cycle. So when we look at then, you look at the landscape of our workforce. So you have 1/3 of our workforce in this high toxic stress response, right? And then you've got, and then I didn't also say, so with just having one or more adverse experience. So US population is 64%, our care force is 73%. So again, so 2/3 of our care force is in some intermediary to high risk of toxic stress, and only a very small percentage, it has 0, is not in a toxic stress response. So that can create a lot of different scenarios within a building or within an environment, right? Because I mean, people are caregivers, they experience all sorts of different situations and their response can be very different. And oftentimes when you look at how someone's response may be in a tough situation where, okay, that wasn't maybe how we wanted to handle that, or then you have someone who handles it well, this is where I often think about, okay, what response are they showing up with at the moment? I think one of the things that going through and learning about ACEs and learning about this just from a leadership perspective for me personally is that the whole idea and the whole looking at someone from a trauma-informed lens is shifting the question from what's wrong with you? Like, why are you acting like this? Like, what's wrong with you? To shifting it to what happened to you. And I can't tell you how many times, like I've spoken about this with different audiences, and I have people come up to me and they're like, Katie, so I know that we were talking about this with the workforce, but I can't stop thinking about my family member, my friend that I know, or
I've been thinking about a friend the whole time.
Okay, you've been thinking about a friend the whole time. Yeah. Okay, right. So how this friend might respond, Norel, like now when you start to think about it from a trauma-informed perspective, it's okay, well, what happened to this person that they're now responding that way?
Right.
Because oftentimes, right, it's been in brain development, and it's been embedded like biologically.
Mm-hmm.
So that was eye-opening for us to just be able to now like be able to see, okay, like this is really what our workforce and what our care force, like where they're at in regards to that past trauma. So honestly, also Nora, when I think about your question, part of it is getting the awareness out there and talking about this as well. Like, I mean, it's become a little bit more of a topic that is being surfaced. But I'll tell you, it's been a bit of a slow adoption, a little bit in regards to like having the conversation, because it is a bit of it's not your traditional workforce conversation.
Yeah, it's a challenging conversation to have,
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like with this data, there's a real opportunity to reproach these situations, right? Like from a leadership perspective, and as opposed to fighting fire with fire, right?
Correct.
It's a different approach. I don't know what the opposite of fire to fire is, but with just more, I think, empathy and open-ended questions about the genesis of this, of why, like you said, why they're behaving that way, and in reflection of like what happened, what's happened that's kind of led to this. That's, I'm sure, super enlightening. And I would imagine that you have partners that are maybe changing, their strategy and approach to employee management as a result of some of this data.
Yeah, and actually, this is something that's really exciting, that we're actually, there is an organization in Arizona called Creative Care, and so Jean is actually working with Creative Care on becoming a trauma-informed organization from an employee's perspective, like nice. From a leadership and employee perspective. So we're actually going down there in May and kicking off, and I'll be actually sharing some of this research and this data. So this is where we're taking, okay, this is the research and what we know, then like how do we implement it within an organization to then be able to create like that change and that understanding of again, not only being able to support our employees and our staff, but also making sure that they're trauma informed as well too. Because again, most people don't realize like this is why I am the way I am.
Yeah.
They just they don't understand it until you have the opportunity to teach them. Mm-hmm. So that's something that's really exciting that's happening in Arizona, and in the state of Arizona, the Arizona Healthcare Association, on the Workforce Development Committee, and they're using the trauma research and data to set out their workforce plan for the state. So we've got some exciting stuff coming up. So we'll be able to hopefully share, later on about, what some of the results have been implementing some of this within an organization.
Man, that's amazing.
So right now, you're going from this report, which basically says things like burnout could be caused by trauma as a child, that trauma.
Yeah. When I think about, I will tell you that even, we've got a new report coming out, our CareForce report, and we know like what percentage of folks are planning to leave the industry. And one of the top reasons after low pay is I'm burnt out. Okay. Like that is one of the reasons. So when you look at, okay, why is someone burnt out? Okay, so I'm living in this state of stress, and it has taken a toll on my mental and my physical health. Like that's what they've said as well. Like 2 and 4, that impact of that past trauma is impacting their mental health, and then let's layer on COVID on top of it. And so this is where it's like, okay, how can we provide more support, more mental health resources? Because also from our study, only 65%, 65% of the care force have never received any type of help. So
that's serious.
Yeah, it's one of those topics where it's like, once you start to dig down and you start to really understand some of the realities of it, it can seem daunting to like, okay, what do we do now? But I think, Dan, what you said is, one, having the empathy as a leader to now understand and to know, and then being able to like, well, what is the support, whether it's EAP, do we have mental health services? I could go on for a whole other topic on some of the current realities, facing our workforce too, around social systems of health.
CARE provide like strategies or resources to help address this, or right now is it just kind of in the reporting and
it's in the reporting right now. I mean, when you think about CARE and our expertise, like that's beyond. That's why, like, for example, you're partnering with someone like Jean. Like, I'm not a practitioner. I'm not a practitioner in regards to going in and changing an organization. But CARE, where we can provide value to the industry and organizations is through, okay, here's what the research and what the data says.
Yeah.
And I will say too that we're, myself and just the organization, just in general, we are big supporters of how do we help this workforce. How do we help them level up? How do we help them, live better lives? And how do we help to highlight and celebrate their stories?
Yeah,
I love that. Wow. I can just imagine in the future, like a CARE sponsored human resources seminar where you have these practitioners like Jean, and other representatives from your team kind of sharing this data and the potential for for evidence-based like adjustments, in the approach of employee management, so that that hopefully retention is like the goal, and overall enthusiasm, for not just what they're doing, but for those who they're actually working with, knowing that they're supported with a lot of these like personal just challenges that don't need to come to the surface and don't need to be shared, but need to be acknowledged, and certainly leveraged in times of need. So that's really, man, that's amazing. Some of those numbers that you're stating are very eye-opening for me.
Yeah.
And as a leader in my own organization, has me really thinking about how we address these challenges when they inevitably arise with our team. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Dan, let's talk a little bit about Viking Pure here. So we are emphasizing creating safer environments through sustainable, non-toxic cleaning solutions, as you know. How does replacing harsh chemicals and implementing green solutions influence employee morale and affect retention in the senior living communities that we serve?
Yeah, it's interesting. Our mission, obviously, as an organization at Viking Pure, is to remove toxic chemicals from the environment. We're very passionate about serving in the senior space, and what we often really try to make an emphasis of is it's not just the residents, although they are a primary priority in this commitment to service. It's the team members, the caregivers, in the community who we equally are passionate about serving and getting toxic chemicals out of their hands. I think what we've seen over the last several years is, one, just an uncountable, amazing amount of just personal testimonies, to the leadership's commitment to safety. Again, not just for the resident and for the team member. I think what we do and what we really try to specialize in is giving these people a voice. Not that they don't necessarily have one, but more often than not, when we're introduced to a new community, the products that they're using weren't necessarily like trialed or given an opportunity, for feedback. It's like, here's the chemicals that we use. Here's what we clean with. Get your job done. We expect a clean community. The little things that I don't think leadership oftentimes either knows about or knows enough to care about are, the challenges associated with using those chemicals. And from our perspective, it's really important that we promote like the features and benefits of our technology, but we also want to make aware, quite frankly, the challenges associated with using toxic chemicals on a daily basis. And I know I've shared this on other panels and I speak about it every week, but there is very real, just like the trauma, study and some of the other studies that CARE has done, there is real data out there that shows these correlations between using these chemicals on a daily basis and lung degeneration rates, chemical burns, skin depigmentation, cancer, neurodegenerative disorders, Alzheimer's disease, all as a contributor to exposure to these products for long periods of time. So I think, from our perspective, the way that, the integration of our technology leads to employee empowerment and longevity is one, we really want to make it known, to these frontline workers, caregivers, that the decision was made from leadership to protect you, right? And in your efforts to keep our communities clean and beautiful and infection free. And we want your feedback. And, when you're transitioning from products, even something as simple as cleaning, chemicals, there can be challenges associated with that. I think the way that we differentiate ourselves, in addition to providing this ongoing education to the dangers with toxic chemicals and the sustainability opportunities for using something simple and safe like Viking Pure, really is, it's the ability for these people, to do their job and to do it in a way that they're going to leave at the end of the day feeling great. I just left a community about 3 weeks ago, and it was a community, as a matter of fact, that we kind of had some challenges with on the front end, right? People are, used to using products that they know, they're used to the smells and the different types of, outcomes. And when they transitioned to ours, it was like, hey, I don't know if this stuff really works. You claim it's so safe. How do you know it's effective? Like, it's normal skepticism on the front end. Their feedback to us, though, was, what gave us an opportunity to really partner with them at a granular level and serve with them as they serve their residents. And when I mean that, I mean, we're cleaning with them. We're showing them how to get the outcomes that they desire. And after we were able to work with that group, we visit, 6 months, a year later, and we start to hear these personal anecdotes where, hey, I'm not having breathing issues anymore when I leave work. I never realized that some of those things were a contributor to, or were as a result of me using the specific toilet bowl cleaner or shower cleaner, or whatever. But, the sore throat or the headache or the breathing issues that I was having, are no more. And it's a representation of this transition away from toxic chemicals. And we've just never been happier to use Viking Pure. Like, that for us is our mission personified. And I think the way that we differentiate a bit is through our commitment to service and making sure that these frontline housekeepers and caregivers are given unconditional support, through, their use of our product. And one thing that we pride ourselves on is our ultimate responsiveness and availability to them in these communities, as they're either bringing on new people or just requesting more training. We hear very often that, our previous chemical supplier or whoever would have never come in here and cleaned this bathroom with us, right? Or, they would have never taken the time to sit and do a resident council meeting so that we can inform and educate, our residents, our family members as to these transitions that we're making and how it may look and feel and maybe smell a little bit different in the community the next time you visit, because we're doing these things. So I think, from our perspective, we just want to be given the opportunity to empower your team. And I think through that, we're able to obviously prove our concept, put our credibility behind our technology, and walk away with really happy, overly satisfied, frontline caregivers and housekeepers and their attempts to honestly do the job that a majority of people don't want to do. And to kind of give them a little bit of just positive opportunity to do it in a way that they just feel better. I think really, it speaks to the commitment from leadership to make sure that they're doing everything they can to keep not just their residents, but their team members safe. So I hope that makes sense. But that's something that we, we're really passionate about.
Do you often find too, because I'll tell you, I do have a piece of data here that I want to share, but before I do that, do you find, so one of the things that when I'm out talking to caregivers across the country, when I ask them, hey, where do you like to go work? And they'll say XYZ community. I'm like, okay, well, Why? It typically comes down to it's pretty. It's a pretty community. It's clean.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a lot of it is around the physical, like the physical aspect of like cleanliness, like around the building. That's, I mean, I can't tell you how many times like I've heard
Really?
that. Yeah. And so I'm curious if your customers have ever thought about using that to their advantage from a recruitment standpoint.
Yeah, I love that. And interestingly, yes, we do. I don't think many of them think of it as an opportunity to promote to, fellow team members as they're maybe growing their team. But what we've seen is that, that metric that you just mentioned, the importance of working in a clean community obviously parallels with residents. They want to live in a clean community, right? Or their family members want them to be in a clean community. And what we've seen is that the data, certainly suggests that cleanliness ranks as like the number one quality that a resident, or I'm sorry, that a community can promote, either just nonchalantly, like accidentally, like we keep our community clean, or actually promote that they strive to keep a clean environment, because that really does resonate with people. So one thing that we do is what we call our antimicrobial certification. Essentially after we've been implemented in a community, they've removed toxic chemicals, they've encouraged their team members, not just at the housekeeping level or culinary level, to engage in a certain level of education, knowing what products are used in their community and why. Our medical advisory board will lend credibility to those communities and actually certify them as antimicrobial, so that they can then start to promote, right, these efforts, the ability to maximize infection prevention through the removal of toxic chemicals, so that we can ensure your residents are going to stay healthy, but they don't have to risk interactions with dangerous products, et cetera, has I think really been a nice feather in the cap of the community and an impactful point of difference. But I love where you're at right now in regard to their maybe willingness to extend that certification language and point of difference to potential team members of theirs as they're bringing them in, knowing how important that is. I think that is just
and I think Norel, okay, here I'm going to try sharing. I've got this one slide. Let's see here. How do I do this on this thing? Okay, here we go. Here, I want to show this. So this is actually data from our most recent CareForce report that's going to be coming out. All right, y'all can see that? Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that we have asked, so we like to ask this question of like, what are you willing to take? So we asked, when seeking full-time employment, would you be okay making $1.50 less per hour in exchange for? Okay, we've asked this question a couple of different ways, but it's this whole idea of like, what am I willing to potentially, again, we're not encouraging people to try to give people less money, but it's like, okay, if I'm going to take, if the average CNA wage is $15 an hour, I'm willing to take a 10% reduction in pay in exchange for, right? It really ranks your value system. And when this is the question that we just recently asked, like,
that's amazing.
What are you willing to, and a clean, well-run facility is tied with good company culture as number one.
Amazing. Wow.
So, I mean,
wow,
that's crazy. So
man,
this was something, again, anecdotal information just from word of mouth of what I've heard from, our caregivers, what they look for. But then when you actually ask them in this regard, like, that is number one before some other options around, flexible scheduling, benefits, location closer to home, like a clean, well-run facility.
Wow.
That's really impactful for me, for obvious reasons. And you've got my wheels spinning right now, because I know that staffing is a significant challenge, across, our portfolio of partners throughout the country. And I feel like there may be some really good opportunity here to further network with their recruiters and their human resource department, to see this and potentially incorporate some basic like language, in in their job descriptions, in their different types of outreach to just again offer that maybe that one just really indelible differentiator to bring good talent in. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So cool. Had to bring this to this conversation.
No, this is super interesting. I'm really I'm flattered to see this in a way that just presents, I think, more opportunity to share best practices. So really cool.
And again, I think I really, buildings and organizations should not underestimate, like, this is something that people want, even though it should be everyone should
be standard, right?
It should be standard, but it's not. It's just not. And so this is, honestly, it's a way for individuals to, or organizations to highlight, if this is something that they take really seriously as a part of their employee well-being strategy, like they should use it for recruiting purposes.
Absolutely.
I think that's really interesting. Yeah. Man, I feel like we almost need to have like a follow-up between just like the three of us and put some materials together for people to use that even like pre-written job descriptions, you know what I mean, that almost have like incorporated some of this language, because if it's that important, they need to be leveraging it. And that's something that we often always say. It's like, even with our antimicrobial certification, right? Like, what we know is that all these communities are looking for any point of difference that they can have. And it's both from a marketing for new residents, and now obviously what we're seeing for bringing on new employees. It's, if you're not leveraging your housekeeping closet now, which you're probably not, right? Like there's a few square footage opportunities there for you to really differentiate and, maybe be the deciding factor between, the place down the street and your spot. So now that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. That's an amazing synergy with, with our talk today.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the other, tie factor there. What role does workplace culture play in retention, according to the data that you've seen? And what are some of the best practices that you've seen for creating a more supportive environment for caregivers?
So we've done a lot of research on culture. We definitely have we have some opinions on it, right? I think what oftentimes people think about is culture, or like, we've got a culture isn't necessarily the team activities, right, that you do within your organization. Like, I find that it's a conversation, and it's a topic within the industry that can I think oftentimes get misconstrued, and like, what really is it that matters to people, and really what is culture, and when you're thinking about building also a good employee experience. And again, when I look back at like some of the data that we have, we've collected like over the years, and even our most recent like CareForce report, the things that people are looking for is that, again, when you think about it, do you have a culture where you are trying to help your staff and your members level up? They're not looking for a handout. They're looking for, a way to advance themselves, whether that's economically, through education, and being able to be a part of a safe and supportive environment where they have leaders that they can go to, where they not only have leaders that they can go to, but they also have support across the entire administration and clinical staff. Honestly, I could spend we have a whole other, what I'll do, Norel, is I'll give you the link to all of our white papers. Our very first white paper actually dives into this like really, really pretty deep. Awesome. Because again, I think one of the things that we have the opportunity to do is to see what operators think that culture is compared to frontline team members, and really the importance of it. Mm-hmm. And yes, like, culture is a part of it, but I'll tell you also, frontline team members, pay is also a big piece of it too.
Yeah.
And that's something that we also now know, like, 75% of the care force, like, they don't have enough money to pay their bills. 1 in 4 housing and food insecure, and there's just some really like tough economic situations where they're at right now too. So I think if an organization leans too much on culture, it can sometimes maybe overshadow some of those basic, like, okay, how do we support and how do we provide, economic opportunity as well too.
I mean, it's nice to be going to bowling parties and happy hours and stuff like that, but when you can't pay your bills, you know what I mean? Like that's a whole nother level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I was talking with Michael Morris from Miller Ridge Senior Living a couple weeks ago, he was talking a lot about how before we were talking about sustainable growth in senior living, and he was saying that in order to do that well, you really need to start with infrastructure. Like you cannot grow without having the infrastructure first. And I think pay and good compensation packages for caregivers and other team members is an important part of that infrastructure.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
And then also being able to, I think, use some of those dollars that are being spent on, professional development for admin, like being able to spend some of that money on, providing those opportunities like to staff and to your caregivers, and, being able to do that as well too. That's also something I've seen as a bit of a disconnect within the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when you were going on the CNA Bash cruise this past year, it's like, how do we get more people to like send their team,
Yeah, I know, that was crazy. So there was about 200 individuals that attended CNA Fest, which was a part of a cruise, but 80 some percent of them paid their own way. Like there was no employer. There was very, very small amount that were employer sponsored, and this was CEU education and whatnot. So I really hope that, there can be some more investment.
Why is it for example, why is it okay to send like your executive directors to Argentum, but not your CNAs to CNA Bash, right? Or like your housekeepers to a maybe an environmental service, sponsor, type of an event. Like all of those things lead to employee satisfaction in their employer, knowing that they're, being supported for personal development opportunities and things like that. It's like we just, for whatever reason, as a culture, right, tend to overlook like some of these just critical frontline employees who, bottom line, like, are the backbone to these organizations, and would not, these organizations would not be successful without them, right? So it's like, we expect them to show up to work every day and to make, low end, like incomes, but like it's, what else, where else can those resources go to keep these people, obviously committed, and just overly satisfied with, with their employer.
Yeah. And I also hope too, and I think that we'll start to, I hope that we start to see a shift and not only just in regards to those opportunities, but also giving those individuals more of a voice. And at a lot of conferences, we do different panels of like industry people, but it's like, where's the panel? Like, let's get panels of frontline team members. Like, and we, one of the things that, we've been toying around with and is, having our own kind of mini one day focused events called Connections. And we did one in Denver in January. And now it's basically inviting people from the industry to come and to hear a lot of the research. Again, I gave you like a very small portion of it, but to hear research and industry insights. And we were going to have one in Houston. Unfortunately, we had to reschedule it, but we're going to have a panel of 4 of our heroes on there, and just calling those 4 individuals up, and every single one was like, yes, absolutely, like I want to be a part of this. And because again, like they just don't get a chance to have their voice heard very often.
Yeah,
I've got so many ideas right now. I feel like there's some really cool opportunities between KARE and Viking Pure to put together some, some of these, exact, opportunities. We should chat more about that, and maybe, strategically, where we can take this in the future.
Yeah,
let's do it. Well, with the very brief minute that we have left today, I do just want to sum up, Katie, what trends or shifts in the workforce based off of CARE's data and your experience in your role, what sort of trends or shifts should senior living leaders be preparing for now to stay ahead of future staffing challenges?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do know that over the next 12 months, we will expect to see 14% of our workforce leave the industry.
Wow.
So we have 86% that are planning to stay, and those that are planning to stay, like they are staying because of it brings them fulfillment and purpose. It's because what they've always done, right? They have that tie and that connection.
This is their career.
Yeah, it's their career. Like it's their calling oftentimes. But the individuals that 14% that are planning to leave, what we do know is that one of the top reasons that they're looking to leave is in regards to low pay and looking to go into the acute care space. But then followed by I'm burnt out. And you know what's even been more interesting when I look at that data, when you look at our workforce in general, is that highest age population that has said that they're burnt out is your mid-20s to mid-30s.
Wow.
Right?
Young.
Yeah. So very, very young. So okay, right. So we've got then, if 14, again, that 14% that are planning to leave, like age is not a factor. Like it's not all the people that are going to retire. Like that is
right.
We have a good chunk of our young workforce that is going to be leaving
prime.
because they're burnt out. And so that's where it's going to be, again, like how do we try to provide the support? How do we try to make a safe and supportive like work environment? If you're not providing flexibility, I mean, we've been doing these studies for the last 5 years. Flexibility is absolutely the number one thing. One of the number one things that people are always looking for. And so how can if someone's burnt out, then how can we flex? So, okay, what is it that you need? Like, how can we try to retain you right within the industry? And that's one thing I know that I'm proud that CARE has the ability to do, because you may leave a full-time employment situation. Okay, I'm not going to work in a skilled nursing facility. Maybe I'm going to go work at the hospital, but I'm still going to pick up shifts on CARE and so that's where it's like we can at least be able to provide like some sort of bridge of
consistency.
Consistency, and trying to keep individuals that may have said, I don't want to work full time anymore in senior living, but I will certainly pick up shifts and I will help like my community down the street on the weekends. And that's where we can continue to try to help to support where we're at from a workforce perspective. But I think those are some of the things as I look at kind of what 2025 and where our care force is at. Those are all big pieces.
Man, shout out to our care group. I mean, don't go. We need you.
I know.
Oh my gosh. So enlightening. And I'm actually excited for our future. I think that this is the kind of data, that we all need to be speaking to, because the change needs to happen right now, in order to keep up with the demand that we obviously, know is coming with this space. So amazing insight, Katie. You're full of knowledge, and I'm just so thrilled and honored that you were able to join us today with this. Yeah,
well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Like I said, we keep talking all day. Got all sorts of things up my sleeve, but and Norel will be able to. I'll give you some of the information so that folks want to download and get more data that they want to take and read. Like I would encourage you all to do that. And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
awesome.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Norel, too, for setting this up. Really appreciate you.
For sure. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I will be following up later today with the replay from today's conversation, as well as some links from Katie. And it was a pleasure speaking with both of you today. Thank you, Katie, again for joining us. And hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.